Hello, everyone. Jim Coventry, Rotowire, NFL Fantasy Football today. All right, let's start out with today's training camp notes. We're going to go over the Cowboys passing attack because the news came out of Dallas, not unexpected. Michael Gallup, with the knee injury he suffered late last season, has been placed on the active PUP list so he could come off that list at any time. Mike McCarthy is saying that Michael Gallup has hit all the targets in his rehab. He's in the fourth quarter of his recovery. But nonetheless, his surgery did not take place till February. So it seems to be a very good chance that he could struggle to be ready for week one, and he may miss more time than that. We can't say whether he'll be in week one or not, but right now it's a very risky proposition. Certainly, at the very least, it would be unlikely you would see him for much of training camp. Now, as we talk about the Cowboys passing attack, here's what I want to point out. CeeDee Lamb, last year he had an uneven performance game log throughout the season. And there are some reasons for that. First of all, he had a really good start to the season. He was clipping 80 yards in most of his first 6 or 7 games, and then it kind of went downhill. Dak Prescott played through a calf injury. As I watched the games, he was not himself for a while. The Cowboys offense had some struggles. But the bigger issue for CeeDee Lamb was that Amari Cooper was a co-alpha receiver, and Amari Cooper would get frustrated when he wasn't getting enough targets. He would frequently come out and say things publicly, and then there would be games when he would be the target hog on the team. Well, Cooper's obviously gone. He's in Cleveland now. CeeDee Lamb is by so far the number one option on that team. I would not be surprised if he flirts with a target share similar to what we've seen Davante Adams have in his days with the Green Bay Packers. Lamb could easily lead the league in target share. Now, the beauty with Dallas is they have shown that Lamb can win on the outside. He can win on the slot. Wherever Dallas needs to move him to be successful, I imagine that is exactly what they'll do. CeeDee Lamb, some leagues he's getting drafted in the first round. I will draft him before Davante Adams. Another story for another day. Adams is a better football player. Adams has more target competition. That's the biggest deal of them all. Adams has a drop-off from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. Carr's still a very good quarterback. But let me just stick with the Cowboys here. So now, James Washington was signed. Look, James Washington was not a good receiver in his time with Pittsburgh. We would see occasional flashes and occasional downfield play, and there was always that little cause for optimism. Greg, thank you. Yeah, I'm 100% on that one. Love CeeDee Lamb this year. So when we look at James Washington, not a factor. I really don't think there is much he is going to do. The Gallup injury and the Washington injuries that Washington is healthy now, but he missed off-season time. That allowed third-round draft choice Jalen Tolbert to get a lot of reps in the offseason. And when I hear the beat writers talk about Tolbert, he's acclimated his way into the offense very quickly. Now, we get a little nervous when we have a third-round rookie from a smaller school come out. But look, Tolbert has acclimated well. His ADP is starting to rise in higher stakes leagues. I've already seen it myself. If you drafted early, way before training camps and the like started, you can get Tolbert in the 16th round. I've seen leagues where he's gone as high as the 13th round. So if he's a player that you really want to aggressively target, especially in a Dallas stack, you may have to be a little more aggressive in getting him. I would not forego players that you're extremely high on over him, but you may not be able to get him as an end game pick anymore. And as the more camp time passes, the more buzz goes along with him. I think he'll continue to inch up a bit, especially if he's the week one starter. Now, Dak Prescott. Oh, let me talk about Dalton Schultz. Look, I know those who listen to me regularly, you hear the bandwagon. Hear me out one more time. If you've heard me a million times, if you're watching this on delay, you can move it forward a minute or so. Dalton Schultz was a very great player last year. 800 yards, did extremely well. I watch every snap of every game. I pay close attention to why things happen. Dalton Schultz had the great advantage of having both CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper on the field. Defense's primary goal was to stop those two dangerous weapons from beating them. When I would frequently watch games, Dalton Schultz often was wide open in the middle of the field. Dak Prescott is a very smart, a very talented quarterback. If you see a receiver running open down the middle of the field, you throw him the football. Dalton Schultz took great advantage of what was given to him. With CeeDee Lamb not having a clear-cut number 2, I believe defenses come in seeing Dalton Schultz as the number 2 option in the offense. Dalton Schultz will be covered this year. He often was not covered last year. He may get a good defender on him. Dalton Schultz, I see as a regression candidate for that reason, because as I said earlier, Dak Prescott's a very smart quarterback. If Schultz has heavier coverage on him and Tolbert's the player who's open, or Noah Brown or any other receiver on the field, it could be at some point Gallup, then Prescott will go to that man. The one player who will be forced target to be CeeDee Lamb because he's a superstar. Dak has enough talent and enough weapons to finish the top 8 quarterback. I have concerns with their offensive line. Tyron Smith's another year older. They lost Lyle Collins. They couldn't afford him because of their salary cap issues. Zeke Elliott, number 1. And they lost Connor Williams. So they lost some talent. They drafted Tyler Smith, who to me is a project. And so he's going to be a week 1 starter. Tyler Biadasz, he's not, I don't see him as much above average. So you got Zach Martin, who's still excellent, maybe slipping a bit, but still excellent. But nonetheless, if Tyron Smith gets hurt, that's going to cause Prescott some issues. But at least having Lamb in the slot will help. I still think Prescott, regardless, is a top 8 quarterback. All right, let's get to the news for today. So Michael Thomas, we heard yesterday, Mickey Loomis, the GM, said that, well, he'll be back soon. Well, soon was today. He was back on the field in practice. Apparently, the beat writer for the team said he didn't have a wrap on his ankle. He seemed to be moving fluidly. It's good news. Michael Thomas is currently being drafted outside the top 30 receivers. For those who believe he could get back to that 2019 form, you're getting yourself a steal. The longer he's on the field, the more that ADP will go up. Look, he hasn't played for the most part in 2 years. He played 7 games 2 years ago, missed the rest of that season, missed all of last year, missed most of the preseason work. I'll let somebody else take the risk. Maybe Michael Thomas will continue to be a superstar. But I also believe that he had a special chemistry with Drew Brees, and that can't be understated. And I don't believe that Jameis Winston will have that same chemistry with him. And they, of course, Michael Thomas, if healthy, is by far their best receiver. But they do have Chris Olave, and they have Jarvis Landry, and even Alvin Kamara. If and when he's on the field, we don't know what his legal status will be. It's possible that Michael Thomas plays, and instead of being the 150 target guy, he's a 120 target guy. That's possible. So we got to think about that. And Greg, in the 7th round, of course, 7th round, worth the risk if that's what you're looking to do. If you're in, especially if you're in a large field tournament and you're looking to take down a tournament, then those upside plays make a lot of sense. If you're in a league where you need stability and you've taken chances on other players, then you may look at a stabilizing force at that point of the draft. But there is a risk with them having missed almost 2 seasons. We can't discount that for a minute. But certainly, Thomas has been an elite superstar, and we can't ever discount that. The injury took a long time to heal. We don't know if that can be recurrence, but that's what we say. All right, so now, in Browns camp, Deshaun Watson and Jacoby Brissett are splitting snaps, but that's obvious, right? Because until Watson's situation with the league is resolved, Cleveland has to be ready for week 1. They would love to be giving Watson all the reps, but if he's not going to be there, and I'm not even going to speculate whether that's 1 game, 6 games, 8 games, who knows? I have no clue. So getting Brissett ready is smart. Now, Watson, as of this past weekend, is still being drafted on average outside the top 15 quarterbacks. So if you need a second quarterback in a league and you believe there's a good chance he's going to play a lot of the season, then drafting at that point for a guy who could be a top 5 quarterback, that makes a lot of sense. Jacoby Brissett is not being drafted in most leagues. Superflex leagues late, certainly as a 3rd quarterback is being drafted. But, of course, the upside of the offense is significantly limited, and I imagine Cleveland would run the ball excessively. They're very well designed for that. Still have a great line, multiple tight ends who can play, and then, of course, the running game with a stable of running backs. So they're fine there. Antonio Gibson's back in the news. A hamstring injury. So Coach Rivera says it's out of an abundance of caution. look, I love Antonio Gibson. I was all in on him last year. And look, he played with a cracked shin and he put up over 1,000 yards. I want to say he was right at 10 touchdowns. For that, it was amazing. But week to week, it was maddening. And now, they bring back McKissick and they draft Brian Robinson. If Gibson doesn't look completely healthy and if he's not looking like the emerging superstar he was 2 years ago, they have other options they're ready to go with. Gibson is the type of player, though, and you're getting him now around pick 50-ish. Well, that's the risk-reward pick. If you're taking him as a running back 3 at that point, low-end running back 2, if you feel he can shake the injury bug, his talent could force the coaching staff to leave him on the field. I don't know how instinctive as a runner he is, but remember, he was playing wide receiver in college. So I believe he's still learning how to be a running back at the NFL level. But he is more of a swing for the fences play because if he's in a timeshare, his value gets torpedoed quite a bit. But again, if he can show the team, I am so good you can't take me out, you could have a league winner. Again, risk reward, weigh that out. J.K. Dobbins in the news every day. This time, he says he's ready to practice, but he was limited to off-field work after practice. But that's better than no work at all. And look, I don't know what the deal with Dobbins will be. He says he'll be ready week 1. The injury, and I know it was more than the ACL. He had a second ligament injured, and I know he was hurt way, way early last year, so he'll have over a full year to recover. And again, he is going outside the top 20 running backs. I know he split work almost equally with Gus Edwards. Dobbins getting a little more work from week 9 on in 2019, but Dobbins had 6 yards a carry, and his fantasy value was really boosted. I want to say he scored 7 touchdowns in the last 8 games. It was a large touchdown reliance he had for that. But that said, the Ravens were 57% run that year. Now, they added Morgan Moses and they drafted Linderbaum on their offensive line, so they've shored that up. Ronnie Stanley was hurt last year. His grade was poor, but that was due to the injury. This line could be elite. They drafted 2 more tight ends to me, and they didn't address receiver. Well, they traded Marquise Brown. So to me, they are going back to heavy personnel. They're going to run Lamar. They're going to run Dobbins. They're going to run Edwards. Dobbins has the talent to pull away from Edwards a bit if he's healthy. If you're worried he's not healthy, don't draft him. If you think he can be healthy, he's in a system that has proven to work. The defense has been addressed. They were hurt last year. They could play with much better game script. J.K. Dobbins, not going to catch a lot of passes. Lamar doesn't like to throw to his running backs a lot. But in half PPR or standard for those who play that, Dobbins has increased value in those systems. Kadarius Toney being drafted outside the top 40 receivers, understandably. Very hit or miss last year. He was hurt a lot. He had a game or two where he looked like an elite talent. He had other games where maybe not looking so great, inconsistent, but he's healthy right now. That's important. Cleared for camp. He'll have a camp to work in Brian Daboll's offense with Daniel Jones. It's a weapon that Brian Daboll's going to want to use. And so, again, we talk risk-reward players. Don't load your roster with risk-reward players. Pick the 1 or 2 that you want to go after. But Kadarius Toney is in that mix for those looking to mix up their rosters, those risk-reward players, because he could pay off in spades. All right, Treyland Burks. Look, we had the offseason report. Not so good that he had asthma. Well, he had to have had that in college. He was out of shape. Well, apparently the news today, Teron Davenport of ESPN, Burks has dropped about 6 pounds. Davenport said he looked good at Wednesday's practice for whatever that means coming from a beat writer. That said, there's still plans to be a run-first offense. I believe Robert Woods, who shed his knee brace, is a consummate professional, runs precise routes. He will be a very comfortable security blanket for Ryan Tannehill. I personally feel that offense will more likely lean to Woods for that reliability as opposed to Burks, who I think they say he has that similar skill set to A.J. Brown, but there are no A.J. Browns out there. So I do think Burks will be up and down as a rookie. I think the better bet is Robert Woods a little later in drafts. That's my opinion. Finally, 2 more pieces here. Christian Watson. So Ryan Wood of the Green Bay Press Gazette is reporting that Watson, with an undisclosed malady, will miss a little bit of time because of an off-season medical procedure. Now, we know this. Aaron Rodgers, it's about trust with him. Jordy Nelson didn't click with him right away. Devontae Adams took a couple of years to click with him. Watson comes from a small school. He's got some great measurables, got some downfield ability. But if he's missing camp time, for me, that's a serious red flag. And where he's getting drafted, I don't know if I could take the plunge on that. Hey, Sammy Watkins is going to be hurt. We know that at some point. Alan Lazard is going to be a blocker a lot, but he'll be a receiver as well. He'll get targets. Aaron Rodgers says he's done everything that's been asked of him. I am kind of shying away from Christian Watson. Missed camp time equals lack of connection with Rodgers, equals potential loss of targets. I think maybe Watson down the road, maybe, but right now I'm going to back off of him in drafts. Finally, this is just confirming what we've heard. Mitchell Trubisky is still continuing to run easily as the number one option in Pittsburgh over Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett may be a little better in a dynasty league right now. Mitch Trubisky, let's say this. He had horrible coaching in Chicago. The one set of games, it was 1 year and part of another, where they would roll him outright, only force him to read half of the field. I know it's simplistic. They would give him reads at the short, intermediate, and deep area of the field. Trubisky had success, and he had mobility. He could run with that. But he made a couple million maker lineups for people for fantasy, right? Well, look, Trubisky has targets here. Say what you will, Chase Claypool, in my mind, very talented. Deontay Johnson, some contract strife. I imagine the CBA kind of forces him on the field. Very good at getting open. Freiermuth at tight end. Najee Harris in the backfield. The line isn't as bad as it was a couple of years ago. It's emerging. They built it a little bit. I see that Trubisky could be a solid 2-quarterback league option, and I believe that he actually benefits Claypool a little more because I believe with the motion that most likely Matt Canada is going to use Trubisky for, I think that will open up the passing game a bit, and Claypool can emerge as a little more of a factor. I do believe also, though, that Deontay Johnson will not be force-fed the targets that he had seen with Ben Roethlisberger, because Ben didn't have much of an arm, didn't want to get hit. Getting rid of the ball was paramount, and Deontay Johnson fit that bill. That was not Chase Claypool's game. I'm a little bit cool on Pat Freiermuth. I like the player, but for the same reason with Deontay Johnson, I felt that Freiermuth was a perfect stylistic fit for what Ben Roethlisberger wanted to do. I think Mitch Trubisky is more likely, while he's playing, to throw to his receivers, a little less to the tight end. And when we look at Freiermuth's number, they were tight end, they were touchdown driven. I want to say this off the top of my head, okay? I want to say he didn't pass 57 yards, and if he did, maybe once. It wasn't much. He was putting up much yardage. And I think if those targets drop, that's problematic. All right, we will be back soon. Enjoy the NFL training camps and follow me on @JimCoventryNFL. Have a great day, everyone.